Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking that deep plunge into Frida McFadden's The Tenant, the psychological thriller.
That's the one. Definitely caused a stir.
Right. So, our mission, as always, is pretty straightforward. We're going to sift through what people are saying about this book, pull out the key bits, basically give you the quick rundown so you can get the essence of it fast.
Yeah, figure out if it's, for you, or just understand why it gets such strong reactions.
Exactly, because it really does seem to split readers. Okay, so let's unpack the core plot a bit. You've got Blake Porter. He's just been fired from his VP job. Ouch.
Big financial pressure there.
Totally. He and his fiancée Krista are facing this huge mortgage. Things are looking pretty bleak. So their solution, get a tenant.
Enter Whitney. Seems perfect. Like suspiciously perfect.
Always the way, isn't it? And yeah, things start getting weird pretty fast. Odd smells, stuff going missing.
Right. Even their fish, Goldie, meets a tragic end. Poor Goldie.
Poor Goldie, indeed. It's that classic setup, right? Things just subtly, creepily unraveling. Lots of hints of, psychological tension, maybe an unreliable narrator.
And definitely that gaslighting element seems pretty strong.
For sure.
And, it's interesting because in this genre, The Tenant really leans into promising that big perspective shift. It's not just about solving a mystery. It's more about, like, identity switching up and finding out who the real mastermind is.
Yeah.
It forces you to completely rethink everything.
Right, that classic rug pull moment.
Exactly. And that reevaluation, that's kind of crucial to how the book hits.
Okay, so with that kind of unsettling setup, let's talk about what works. What makes this book a hit for so many people? What's the McFadden style doing right here?
Well, one thing you hear constantly is just how bingeable it is.
Right.
McFadden uses these really short chapters, often ending on a little hook. It basically makes you have to turn the page. The pacing is super brisk.
So it's built for speed, essentially, like a one-sitting read.
Pretty much, yeah. It's designed to pull you through without giving you much chance to pause and overthink.
And that speed must mesh well with the atmosphere people talk about, that creepy feeling. Did she use specific tricks besides the setting to kind of crank up that unease?
Well, definitely. The setting itself, you mentioned that NYC brownstone, it becomes almost like another character. Really adds this claustrophobic feeling. Turns a home into, well, something dreadful.
Yeah, that confinement can be really effective.
And she layers Blake's perceptions, which seem to get more and more distorted, with Krista's actions, which can feel manipulative.
Yeah.
So you, as the reader, you're constantly asking, okay, what's actually real? Who am I supposed to trust here?
Classic gaslighting, but amplified because he's trapped in his own house.
Exactly. Makes it really potent.
And all this builds towards that big finale, the twist, the reveal about Krista orchestrating things, Whitney having her own game. It definitely landed for a lot of readers, even if, it was maybe divisive for others.
It was divisive, yeah. But that aha moment, when you see the full picture, the mastermind, the identity stuff, it's like a puzzle finally clicking. For many, that's super satisfying. It sort of justifies the whole journey, connects the dots.
And if you've read her other books, maybe it feels familiar, but in a good way, like a signature move.
Could be. For some, it's like, yes, this is the McFadden twist I was waiting for. It's a formula, sure, but it's a formula that clearly works for a lot of people.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But like we said, not every book clicks for everyone. So let's switch gears. What about the things that miss the mark for some readers?
Right, because no book is universally loved.
One thing I saw pop up quite a bit was criticism about the characters being, well, annoying. Or maybe just naive, like Blake's gullibility or Krista maybe seeming a bit clueless sometimes. Why does that bug readers so much in a thriller?
It's that feeling, isn't it? You just want to yell at the character, come on, don't you see it?
Yeah.
That kind of extreme naivete can really pull you out of the story.
Right.
In thrillers, I think readers often want the characters to be somewhat savvy, to pick up on some clues.
Right, react realistically.
Exactly. When they consistently miss really obvious red flags, it can feel frustrating, and honestly, it can undermine the tension the author's trying so hard to build.
That's a really good point about expectations. And speaking of that, if you're a big thriller reader, or especially if you've read like a lot of McFadden's books,
Her backlist is huge.
right, does that big twist maybe start to feel a bit predictable?
Yeah, that definitely comes up. For seasoned readers, the formula can become quite apparent.
Does that risk turning people off eventually, or is there still a comfort in knowing kind of what you're going to get?
That's exactly where it gets polarizing. For some readers, guessing the twist isn't a negative. It's like, yes,
Hmm.
figured it out.
Hmm.
It's satisfying in its own way, but for others,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it could feel like the promise of a genuine surprise wasn't quite delivered.
Like a broken contract almost.
Sort of, yeah. And related to that, some readers also mentioned pacing issues, especially early on. While the overall book is fast, that initial setup, before the twist really kicks things into high gear,
It dragged a bit for some.
then found it a bit tedious, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be patient for that big payoff moment when things really shift.
Okay, that all tracks. And we've definitely seen how The Tenant splits opinion. It's helpful to hear from actual readers. There was this one Reddit comment from Totally Wing It, pretty blunt. They just said, I didn't love it. I found the characters were unlikable, and that makes it hard for me to get into a story.
Oof, yeah, that gets right to it. Characters are just so crucial for connection.
Absolutely. If you don't like who you're reading about, it's tough.
But then you get the flip side.
Yeah.
Or maybe the middle ground.
Yeah.
Like Bothier64, also on Reddit, who said basically, I liked it, with the little shrugging emoji. Didn't hate, didn't love, but I thought it was fine.
Haha, the Shrek emoji says it all sometimes. It was fine.
Exactly, and that just highlights how personal reading is, right?
Yeah.
Fine for one person is amazing for another, or infuriating for someone else, especially in this genre, which hits different psychological buttons for everyone.
Sure.
So ultimately, synthesizing all this, The Tenant really comes across as a, sleek, very fast-paced psychological thriller. It definitely delivers on creating that creepy atmosphere and building tension.
Okay, so summing up our final verdict, it leans into that complexity. If you've read a ton of McFadden or just thrillers in general, you might find the characters,
Yeah.
let's say, trying.
Grating is a word that comes up.
And the twist might feel a bit familiar. It's definitely polarizing. Some people will absolutely devour it overnight.
While others might put it down pretty early on.
So the big question for you, the listener, should you read it? Here's our quick guide. You'll probably really enjoy The Tenant if you just love those twisty, super bingeable page-turners.
Yeah, if you want a quick read that grabs you and doesn't let go.
Or if you're generally okay with protagonists who make occasionally frustrating choices, you can roll with that.
Right. But maybe give it a skip if you're looking for really deep, layered characters. That's not really the focus here.
Or if you really want something highly original that breaks genre molds.
Yeah, if familiar tropes bother you, or if you really dislike predictable reveals.
So that's a bottom line.
Bottom line, The Tenant is a solid Frida McFadden book. It's expertly paced, it's filled with tension, and it absolutely delivers her signature kind of twist. Just, be ready for some character decisions that might make you groan, and maybe a little deja vu if you're a thriller aficionado.
So what's the core takeaway for you listening? The Tenant is really a masterclass in how to create swift, atmospheric tension. It does that very well. But it comes packaged with a specific set of character types and plot mechanics.
And those elements together create this really polarizing reaction. It just won't land the same way for everyone.
It really shows how even a straightforward-seeming thriller can spark such different, strong feelings.
Which actually raises a kind of interesting question to think about, doesn't it? In this world where there's just so much content and authors like McFadden are so prolific, what actually makes a book bingeable?
Good question.
And how do our own expectations, especially when we know an author's style, their signature moves, how does that shape whether a familiar formula feels like comforting and enjoyable?
Or just predictable and frustrating.
Yeah. What does that preference tell us about what we're actually looking for when we pick up a story? Is it comfort, surprise, something else?
That's definitely something to chew on, especially with so many authors building recognizable brands now. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into The Tenant.